In this video, we're going to examine SPRY datasets. SPRY datasets allow you to dynamically display related data throughout your entire site without having to use databases or server-side scripting. This is done through connecting to elements from an XML or HTML source file and then displaying them on the desired page in whatever format is required. Dreamweaver even gives you a wizard-like interface that gives you options for how your dataset information is presented on the page. You can choose from preset data layouts or simply use the bindings panel to populate SPRY widgets or manually created SPRY regions later. We'll create an interactive master detail region by using a SPRY HTML dataset. We'll first take a look at the source file for our dataset and how this information will be presented on another page. So here we have this calendar list file open. It's a simple table, and you can see I have columns for thumbnails, pictures, when the event's going to be, what it is, where it is, and some additional details. If I scroll down, I can see that we have quite a few events. So I want to display this on a page in an interactive format so that people could maybe click on the thumbnail and get more information about the event. And to do that, we'll use an HTML dataset. I'm going to switch over to the calendarbuild.html file. So this has nothing on it except for our masthead. So I'm going to go over to my insert panel, and on the insert panel, notice I'm on my SPRY objects. And I'm going to choose the SPRY dataset. Now, as soon as I click that, I get a much larger window that comes up. And this is that wizard-like interface that I was talking about earlier. The first thing I have to choose is whether the source file is going to be an XML file or an HTML file. And we're going to use HTML. I can leave the default name DS1, or I could change it and make it, let's say, DS Calendar for the name of the data source. If you're using multiple data sets, I really recommend that you name something that relates to the content itself. Now, you have to specify a data file, and I'm going to go ahead and browse out into my root directory, and I'm going to select that calendar list file that we were looking at a minute ago. And as soon as I select that, you'll notice that it gives us a nice visual preview of that page. Now, if you have multiple elements on a page, you have to choose which one you want to use as a data source. It could be any element on a page that has an ID. This little yellow arrow, if you click on that, it'll go ahead and select the element that it's on top of. We only have one element on the page that could serve as a source, and this is the table, so we're going to go ahead and select that. As soon as I do that, the data preview populates below that, and I can see the data that's being brought in from the data source. Now, I could filter this information out by using advanced data selection and using, for example, class selectors to filter out which elements are brought into the data source and which are not. Since we want all the data, I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And as soon as I do that, I get a nice little data preview here. Now, here I can sort and change how this information is displayed. For example, in the category when, I'm going to click on the column when, and I'm going to go ahead and data type this. I'm going to data type it as a date. Dreamweaver now knows that these are date formats, and it can sort them as such. Now, down in the other options, notice we have the options to sort columns. I'm going to choose to sort by when, and we'll sort in ascending order. And since we've already data typed that as dates, notice that the first date shows up at the top of our table now, and it goes all the way down to the bottom date. Click Next. And now I have to choose how I want to present this information on the page. Now, notice that I do have the bottom option of saying don't insert any HTML. And if I did that, I could go over to my bindings panel later on, take the bindings from the data set and populate them on the page, much the same way I would do with any type of dynamic information I was working with. But here I could choose to insert a table, a master detail region, stacked containers, or stacked containers with a spotlight area. We want that sort of interactivity of a master detail layout. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And instead of accepting the default settings, I can click the setup and go through exactly what's going to be displayed as master columns versus detail columns. Well, the thumbnail shows up automatically because it was the first column. I'm going to go ahead and click the plus symbol to add some extra ones here. I'm going to do the when, the what, and the where. I can also choose our stacking order. For example, after the thumbnail, I might want the what to show up before the when. I can do the same thing for my detail columns. I can select what and move it above when, and that'll change the order in which these appear. I could also add or take away things from the detail columns as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK and then Done. And there's my master detail region. Now, if I hit live view, I can preview this and check out the interactivity. So if I scroll down, as I click on one of these thumbnails, I notice that the detailed area to the right of that is updating. So it's functioning exactly the way we're wanting. Now, obviously, this is the default look and feel. I'm going to switch over to our finished calendar page. And this is a page where we've modified the CSS and changed some of the placement, but it's exactly the same thing otherwise. When I click on Live View, You can see here we have a little bit more of an attractive presentation of this, although in reality, it's exactly the same thing, just with some modified CSS and some additional information typed in. Now, updating the source file would cause any HTML dataset based on it to update as well, without any input from the developer. This way, a simple edit on an existing table could cause site-wide updates. So I'm going to go back to my calendar list.html, and maybe this date here where the Banksy graffiti exhibit is coming on, maybe that's going to happen in October instead. So I'm going to highlight this and just type in 10. So now it's going to be October 11th, 2008 instead. So let's go ahead and save this. And then we'll go back over to our calendar build. Now, we didn't really save this file earlier either. So as soon as I save it, again, notice that because this is a Spry object, just like any other piece of Spry that we're doing, if it requires additional JavaScript or CSS files to be added to your site, it's going to go ahead and request that. So let's go ahead and do that. And by the time I turn on live view again, if we scroll down, notice that there is the change in the Banksy graffiti file. It is sorted differently as well now, and it comes in with the October 11th date without me having to touch or modify this file. So by using Spry datasets, you can add complex interactive displays to your pages based off of information contained on other pages or source files. No server-side code is required, and non-web designers can update pages without needing extensive Dreamweaver experience. How the information is filtered, displayed, and controlled is totally up to you, making this one of Dreamweaver's most compelling Spry features.